my name is Kaylee, and today I will be demonstrating my Philosophy 1301 presentation on my term paper, Right, Wrong, and Everything in Between, based on John Stuart Mill's Utilitarianism's philosophy. So why I chose utilitarianism for my term paper is because ethics affect everybody. Moral decisions are not always easy, and I'm interested in healthcare ethics, as well as I wanted to understand difficult decisions. So basically all that boils down to is I wanted to understand why and how healthcare and our government make the decisions that they do based on the greatest good for the greatest number of people, which we will discuss in the next slide. So our philosopher is John Stuart Mill. This is based on the principle of utility, which means the greatest good for the greatest number of people, meaning that our actions are judged by their own consequences, meaning whenever you use the greatest good for the greatest number of people, utilitarianism philosophy, it basically means that you're taking yourself as an individual out of any perspectives and you're trying to do the amount of good, the most amount of good that you possibly can, which in turns means that your actions are judged by your own consequences of said utilitarianism philosophy. So why I think it's important is it helps solve difficult moral problems that you just don't see on a day-to-day basis, as well as it focuses on outcomes more than it focuses on the individuals, and it influences laws and public policies, literally every single one of them. The basis behind it is greatest good for greatest number of people. You still have to use these things today in public healthcare systems as well as government. You see it every single day, whether you like it or not, whether it's just something from HIPAA, whether it's a law that's just going into place. Again, greatest good for greatest number of people. So a couple examples that I have are the COVID-19 vaccine. So obviously there was a very limited supply whenever it first came out and it was first produced, which means that we had to do the greatest number of good for the greatest number of people. What did that mean? We had to personally make sure that our healthcare frontline workers got it first, as well as high-risk patients. Why? Because you wanted to make sure that the people who are fighting the disease always make sure that they go first, and it's not about your individual perspective. Again, another thing is your organ transplants. So there are obviously way more patients than there ever will be available organs. And so doctors have to prioritize who will most likely benefit from said organs in order to get the most amount of impact on that decision. So some of its strengths and some of its weaknesses. So some of its strengths is that it encourages thinking about others, meaning that your individual self is not necessarily who likes to think about these ideas and moralities, about these hard truths. You always want to think about others in this perspective. It helps make difficult decisions, meaning this whole utilitarianism aspect is the greatest good for greatest number of people. It very much limits the individual's perspectives based on how you choose to answer those very difficult moral decisions. And it focuses on overall well-being, meaning that if others are around you are benefiting, and then that means you're slightly benefiting. So in a way, it puts you into that greatest good for greatest number of people individually, but as a whole, it helps produce a better outcome. And its weaknesses. So there's a couple big weaknesses when it comes to this, is individuals' rights are pretty overlooked. Your moral decisions and ethics don't really, I wouldn't say matter, but they aren't as important. So we want to make sure that you as an individual are just thinking about the greatest number of good. And it can seem unfair to some people, not choosing yourself and not being selfish to help the greatest amount of people in their ethical and moral decisions. But that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much, and if you have any questions, please let me know.